All right, so today we're going to talk about the cell cycle. Essentially, um, if cells need to grow, or if you need more cells, how does that work? What's the life cycle of a cell? So, if you think about it, you have two choices. As a teenager, gets older, you're getting taller, bigger, and so you are made of cells. So you have two choices. The cell can either get bigger as you get bigger, or the cells can divide. And as they divide, you basically, as you grow, become more and more cells. And so, which do you think occurs? Do you think the cells just get bigger as you get bigger, or do you think they divide? And then the second question is, why do you think we need cells to replicate and make more cells? Do you think there could be too much cell replication? So let's go back, actually. So the answer is our cells actually divide. And so it's not as though you get bigger and bigger cells. It just means you have more and more cells. And so there's many reasons to have new cells. And we'll talk about that later. And so why do you think we need our cells to replicate and make more cells? And then what happens if we make too many cells? And so I'll answer the second question first. So if we make too many cells, we form a growth where there's too many cells in that area, and we call that a tumor. And so that gets into the discussion of cancer and that kind of stuff. And so we know in general that cancer is not a good thing. But why is it that our cells need to divide? And so there's three reasons. One, we're growing. Two, we have to repair things. And then three, we need to replace dead cells with living ones. And so cells divide at different intervals. So our skin cells divide very frequently. So every 2 to 3 weeks, we get new skin cells. Our intestinal cells, like our stomach cells, they divide at 3 days, so they go really quickly. But our liver cells divide at 300 to 500 days, so once every year. And so you imagine our stomach cells, remember the pH is super low, it's really acidic, so it makes sense that our stomach cells have to be dividing because they're getting, they basically die at a quicker rate because it's such a low pH. But liver cells, though, you can hear of people who have, who maybe consumed a lot of alcohol or alcoholics. The problem is your liver cell doesn't regenerate itself, and so very quickly, because the cells take a long time to divide or to reproduce. And so that's why your liver can technically grow back, but it would take a long time. And liver cells, they do a lot of like the filtering of alcohol and other stuff like that. There's egg cells, so like female egg cells, they never divide. So the number of egg cells that a female is born with is however many they will have, right? And every month an egg will drop and will start the menstrual cycle. And so that's actually a reason why these egg cells will be as a female, as a biological female, as she goes through her lifespan. The egg cell will, unfortunately, whatever she eats or whatever exposure, some type of toxic exposure occurs, those egg cells don't have the opportunity to divide. And so what happens is those egg cells undergo mutation and that kind of stuff. So what happens is, since those egg cells are older, so to speak, right, because they never divide, you never make new ones, it's partially the reason why, in general, there's a higher risk of birth difficulties for older females. Why? Because the eggs have been around for those many years. All right, so cell division, this is what it looks like. So what you'll see is we have one cell divides to 2, and then divides to 4, and so on. So the cells divide, and they happen at different rates, like we talked about. Oops. Okay, so when do the cells divide? Well, there's reasons. One is, first of all, you have to, if you think about it, if you want to divide, you need everything in the original cell to be in the duplicate cell. And so you have to copy their DNA. You have to create new proteins. The cells, when they get to a certain size, they can no longer grow further, and then so they divide. And then whenever there's space, they can divide as well. All right, so the cell cycle. Cell cycle is a process of a cell undergoes in order to grow and divide. And it occurs in eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. And the cell cycle is divided into two main stages. One is called interphase, and one is called mitosis. So in this video, we'll talk about interphase, and then the next video we'll talk about mitosis. So here's what the cell cycle looks like. Just notice here is mitosis. So right here, mitosis is a small portion of the whole cell cycle. So this is the whole cell cycle, right? And so here's mitosis, right? So the rest of the part is interphase. So this is interphase. So the cell, when it's ready to divide, it actually spends most of its time in interphase. And you can see here. Okay. So interphase is made up of three steps or stages. The G stand for growth, and the S stands for synthesis. So G1 and G2 are growth and normal functions, whereas S is where S stands for synthesis. If we remember, in order to double, you have to double the DNA. Why? Because then each cell eventually will have its own copy of the DNA, right? And so you have to synthesize or replicate the DNA. And so remember, G is for growth, S is for synthesis. S occurs when the DNA needs to replicate. So here you have G1, and then you have the S phase, and then you have G2. Okay? So let's talk about what happens when after DNA replicates. Well, first of all, the DNA is wound into a structure called a chromosome. And so here we have a chromosome over here, and this chromosome has already duplicated. So this is after replication. All right. So this is after replication. Okay? And so there's different parts to the chromosome. So every human has 23 pairs of chromosomes. So that equals 46. So 23 times 2 is 46. You have 23 pairs because you get one copy from mom and one copy from dad. So a chromatid is one half of the duplicated chromosome. And centromeres connect the chromatids. So this, you're looking at a duplicated, this chromosome is already duplicated, meaning normally you just have one of these. So here's one duplicate, and then here's the other one. So remember, this is after the DNA has been replicated. So this is two copies. Here's the black is one copy, and then the second copy. So you have identical genes here. So like this, let me use a different color, sorry. So this here is the same as this here, right? Because they're duplicated. And then what holds everything together? Well, in the middle is called a centromere. And so right here is called, this area right here is called the centromere, and it holds it all together. Okay. All right, so the next video we'll talk about what happens in mitosis. So to kind of set the stage, we went through G1, which is a growth one. S, we duplicated the DNA. G2, now we're ready to actually create two new cells. So interphase is almost setting everything up for creating the two new cells, which we call mitosis.